In his book, Consider Islam, Kenny Bomer quotes a portion of what he refers to as the last sermon of Prophet Muhammad. The quote's found on page 16, and it says, "All mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and a non-Arab has no superiority over an Arab. Also, a white has no superiority over a black, and a black has no superiority over a white, except by piety and good action." End quote. Now, just for the record, I totally agree that every human being is equal in value, regardless of their ethnic background. But this is a biblical principle. It's not anything that's found in the Qur'an. We're all made in the image of God, whether black, white, Arab, non-Arab, male, or female. But there is one who is superior to all of us, and that is the Lord Jesus Christ, the incarnate Son of God. As the God-man, he is superior to Muhammad in every way. And of course, the Bible is superior to the Quran. It's precisely because of the person and work of Christ that there's no need for another revelation, another prophet. It really does come down to the book and the man. It's either Muhammad and the Quran or Jesus and the Bible. So I want to make 2 points in this video concerning the last sermon of Muhammad. Number one, Muslims desperately want us to believe that there is historical evidence to support their Islamic faith. It's not difficult to find a version of this so-called final sermon of Muhammad on the internet. In fact, it's become quite popular. And our Muslim friends would have us to believe that it accurately describes the history of Islam. At some point, they usually tell us that it was delivered on the 9th day of a specific month around 632 CE in the Urana Valley of Mount Ararat. But rarely do they give any kind of source. In fact, Kenny Bomer gives us nothing. He just quotes a portion of this sermon that can be found all over the internet. I'll admit some Islamic websites give a few hadith references which address the same topic as the sermon, but the content of these traditions is often misrepresented. Moreover, there are at least 2 versions of this sermon. Number one, the sanitized version, which has become popular, and then secondly, the one that's found in Al-Tabari, volume 9, titled The Last Years of the Prophet. And one of the problems with Al-Tabari, this authentic version, is the fact that it dates well into the Abbasid dynasty, some 200 years after the death of Muhammad. According to the standard Islamic narrative, Muhammad comes along some 600 years after Christ in a different culture, a different geographical location, a different language, and he changes the biblical narrative. He changes the biblical gospel. And the best source that we have for this final sermon comes along another 200 years afterwards. So obviously, Al-Tabari doesn't give us early eyewitness testimony about Jesus Christ or Muhammad. But things get even worse. The popular version of this sermon certainly seems to be quoted simply because, secondly, Muslims desperately want us to believe that Muhammad was as kind and as compassionate as Jesus. After quoting a section of this sermon, Kenny Bomer immediately claims Islam dismantles and tears down walls that hatred and bigotry erect. Page 16. Yet his entire book is an attack on Christianity. It misrepresents Christianity and the West in general. After reading this book, though, you might think that Islam is a peaceful religion and Muhammad was an excellent pattern of conduct, just as the Quran says in Surah 321. Yet he never deals with the violent and controversial claims of the Quran. He never deals with the violent character of Muhammad. Honestly, he never presents any real evidence or any rational reason to consider Islam. One of the last chapters of the book is titled Rights of Women in Islam. But the problem is that the authentic version of Muhammad's sermon from Al-Tabari, it says that a man is allowed to beat his wife. How convenient to leave that out. And by the way, this corresponds with what the Qur'an and the Hadith teach. So again, why not deal with these problems in the book? It's been said that Islam thrives in an atmosphere of ignorance. And one of the primary reasons many people do consider Islam is because they just don't know what it teaches. If all they ever read was Kenny's book and this fake sermon on the internet, they might be attracted to Islam. They might actually find it appealing. But the truth is, Muslims do not have an objective moral standard by which to live their lives. The will of Allah is arbitrary. He doesn't have a righteous nature by which he must act. He can will good as well as evil. Contemporary Sunni Islam says that Allah is pure will. He doesn't have a nature. Even his 99 names do not give the Muslim an unchanging moral standard. And Muhammad's he's not any better. He may be called an excellent pattern of conduct, but the Islamic prophet simply does not compare in any way to the biblical Jesus. So why do Muslims constantly try to convince the public that their book and their man is just as good as Jesus and the Bible? I say they're fighting a losing battle. So, Lord willing, in the next several videos, I will point out how this final sermon from Muhammad contradicts the Quran and the example of Muhammad. Until then, if you're considering Islam, you might want to reconsider.